Well, hello, everybody. This is Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes, and I am so happy that you are with us here tonight. I understand from somebody that we weren't on mute when we were having our conversation here just a little bit ago. So I hope it was entertaining. I hope we didn't say anything offensive. I don't think so, because I've got some great friends with me here tonight as we were talking about the differences between the insects that Cam deals with in Thailand compared to the insects that we deal with here in the Midwest. So happy to have you with us here tonight as we talk about this really important topic, gaming disorder, and how it impacts many of us, I'm sure, at different levels. And you'll hear that in the stories of Michael, Melanie, and Cam here. I'm just going to give a brief little introduction as to who each of them are, but then I'm going to turn things over to them so that they can talk. Here at Protect Young Eyes, when things changed last year, as many internet safety organizations did, we pivoted towards webinars, and we did about 120 free webinars for parents over the past 12 or 15 months. This is an extension of that effort because now more than ever, parents need good information, and the risks are there, but technology is also a good thing. We want to help parents find that balance. So I hope we can find that tonight. So what's really special, not only are the stories from the three that I'm joined with tonight, but the longevity. As I was talking about, this is a gritty, tough space. It's difficult to day in and day out hear the stories and help the parents who have a lot of questions. And this is a group that has done that and are definitely on the front lines when it comes to what we're going to talk about tonight. Cam, Adair, any of you who are familiar with gaming and those who struggle with gaming disorder have to be familiar with Cam. He's been around longer than any of us here, and he speaks regularly internationally. He's been featured in numerous publications, and he enjoys traveling, as we spoke a little bit about in the time when you were all listening in on us. And so I'm really blessed to have Cam with us. Michael Jacobus, the executive director for Reset Summer Camp. He is a lifelong camp guy, but has, instead of retirement, he has traded that in for some really important and difficult work, helping young people recover who are struggling. And he works at Reset Camp. He's the director there, and you'll hear a little bit more from him. He's one of us. He's walked alongside a son who struggled. I think that puts him in a spot where he can speak very personally. And the same is then true of my third guest, Melanie Hempe, whose family was also touched by this issue. And she is the founder of ScreenStrong, an educational organization that empowers parents to pause toxic screen use. Doesn't that sound glorious? And so we'll have a chance to hear a little bit more about her perspective on that. I'm sure that many of you at this point in time are familiar with Zoom. It's almost an extension of all of us now, just given what season we've come out of. Please, at any point, drop your questions down in the chat. I have a list of questions that I'll be asking our guests, but I'd like to provide some of those publicly here for our guests to answer, since they are the experts. And this is going to be, this is being recorded, and this will be shared for those of you who have registered to be able to listen afterwards if that's of interest to you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Cam, I'm going to start with you. I want to start with a basic definition, if you don't mind sharing with us, what is gaming disorder? And just imagine for a minute that you're speaking to a group of parents who maybe have kids who game, who really don't know much about it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris, for having me, and thank you for everyone who is here, both now and in the recording. Gaming disorder is officially recognized by the World Health Organization, and it's classified by 3 different sets of criteria. The first is impaired control over gaming. The second is gaming taking precedence over other interests and activities. And the third, which is the most important, is distinguishing between playing games just recreationally or for fun compared to playing games because you're continuing to experience negative impact in different areas of your life, including at school or work or in your relationships. So I think often this term gaming disorder can feel really intense, and it can feel very official. And there are a number of important reasons why it needs to be recognized and diagnosable. But for the everyday family, the key distinction between what's a problem and what's just a hobby is that inability to stop when you're playing too much, and it having a ripple effect, negative impact in various areas of your life that you can't seem to get under control.
Thank you for that. And Melanie, you have a private Facebook group that I know is very active with people that are strong supporters of your work there at ScreenStrong. As an extension to what Cam just shared, this impact on sort of everyday life and the ripples then out to other areas. How do you hear that playing out? Of course, anonymously, I know you guard confidence with what's happening inside of that group, but how do you see that playing out with the stories that you probably see very frequently in that private Facebook group that you run?
Yeah, so anyone can join the group too. It's ScreenStrong Families if you need help. And what we see in the group initially when we started it because we have a challenge. It's a 1-week detox, and people were coming in there to get support on how to do that. And now, over the few months of successful parents that had gone through the detox, now they're helping the new people coming in. And so what we see might surprise you a little bit. I think when I think about this question, the first thing I think of are parents who feel very isolated. They are on islands. We hear this repetitively. I feel like I'm on an island. Nobody understands what's happening. And to Cam's point, there are some really strong criteria for an actual addiction, but my voice is, my opinion to people is to say, the minute you feel like there's a problem in your house, there's a problem in your house, and you need to get some help. And so what we see in the group are parents coming in with a lot of questions about why they feel like there's so much conflict around this. Why is it so hard to get my kids off? And Chris, we've been in the pandemic and it's been really hard because there's just been this huge dose of screen time. And I think it's gotten a little bit out of hand. And so I feel like the kids that were at risk have sort of fallen off the edge a little bit. And so parents are coming in, they're asking about, how do my kids still have friends if I'm going to pause their, video games? They're asking things like, how many minutes a day is okay? And it's because they're just feeling panicked a little bit, and they need support, they need community, they need to know that there's nothing wrong with them, and really there's nothing wrong really with their kids. We've all gotten into these screen habits, and we need to figure out how to pull out of it. And then that's what we do in the group. We help you discontinue the toxic use. We are not against all screens. We get that question sometime. We're not screen free. That's not what the organization is about. We're about eliminating toxic screens and keeping the good stuff, keeping the clean screens, I call it.
Yeah, that's great. Right. We all want a number. I receive that all the time too. What's the right amount of time? It's easier to parent to a number. And what I've found, Melanie, and maybe you've found this too, is when I tell parents to forget the number, it's almost like this burden has been released off of them. A stressed parent creates a stressed kid. And if I'm managing to the minute, the amount of time, it's not to the minute, it's look for those indicators, those other qualitative factors that point toward a problem that could be toxic, or that could be more than just I like to game, or more than just a hobby. But it's almost giving parents permission to not track the minutes. And they look at you like, really? I'm not a bad parent if I'm not kicking my kid off of every screen 90 minutes in. Like, no, my gosh, no. So I hear some of that too. Now, on the extreme end of all of this, Michael, you work in a really interesting, I kind of put you on the tip of the spear here when it comes to what we see in toxicity with gaming. And so do you want to just expand a little bit? I'm guessing there's people who don't even know about what you do even existing, to be honest. So I'd love to hear kind of that extreme end of kids who show up at your doorstep there at Reset Camp.
Yeah, that's fine. There isn't actually another program that does what I do the way I do it. I've taken a career of running summer camps, which were traditional camps where kids were excited to be there and came next year and looked forward to swimming in the deep end and making new friends and things like that. And I added a therapeutic model and made it a digital detox and life skills program. So I have friends in the camp industry that tease me that I went from running camps where kids were excited to be there to running camps where no kid wants to be here. Because most kids think they don't have a problem. Mom and dad have a problem. They're just fine. And much to Melanie's point, I talk to parents all the time who feel such shame and guilt and embarrassment. How did I let this happen to my child? And what I tell them is to give themselves a little bit of grace. Because they are a parenting generation which no generation before them has ever had to deal with what they are dealing with. The onslaught of big tech and in-app games and constant media attention on devices to their kids is something that, you know, my generation certainly never had, and the generations in between have had varying degrees of. So, you know, I will agree with them that they are the parents, and we do run into a lot of parents who are trying to be the friend and not the parent of their child. But at the same time, you know, I'll say whatever's happened is in the past, and let's focus on today and moving forward.
Excellent. There are a lot of guilt-ridden parents coming out of 15 months of feeling like all time was spent on screens that probably desperately need to hear that. And so thank you, Michael, for being another voice to give parents some of that relief. You know, Melanie, Michael said something there that I wonder if you're comfortable expanding on a little bit. And I'm guessing that even some who are attending may need a word here. And that is that feeling of guilt. It's not, you know, you go through as a parent, of course, we want the best for our kids, right? I have 4, I know you have 4. We want to do whatever we can to protect, but also prepare them for a world that is real. And so do you mind expanding a little bit on your personal connection to gaming disorder and maybe some of that cycle that you went through as a loving mom? And maybe there's somebody out there who really needs to hear that from you tonight.
Yes, I will. Absolutely. So I love the word grace. I love that because I feel like I made more mistakes than anyone listening tonight or today. I made so many mistakes when it came to managing screen time in our home. Way back, we were part of that experimental group of boys that were just being raised on these games. And so what happened to us, I'm a nurse. I have a nursing background. I feel like I'm pretty aware of addiction, but I never in a million years thought that a video game could be an addictive behavior. And at the time when all this was happening in our family, I would talk to my friends and they would, I mean, the word addiction, Cam, you probably remember this too. It was like a bad word, like you couldn't say video game addiction. So when all this was happening with my son grew up for the first 12 years about, fine in the backyard, getting dirty and digging in the mud. And then he got a Game Boy. And around middle school, everything shifted. And he started dropping out of all of his sports. He dropped out of piano and he was actually pretty good at that. And it was during the time when the big parenting topic was not to overschedule your kids, if y'all remember that. So I thought, oh, good, I won't make him stay in his sports. And so what he did is he stayed home. He got really good on his video games. Everything turned pretty sour when he went to high school and got a laptop. It was a mandatory thing that he got a laptop. And that's the day that I felt like I lost the battle in my house. And at that point I had become the game cop mom, which I hated that job. I did not want that job, but you know, if you were raising a gamer, you have to have a voice of wisdom somewhere to set the kitchen timer and get them off. So it was causing a lot of conflicts in our home. And I was so excited for him to go to college because I just knew that he was going to outgrow it and have a real life. Now, I want to tell you that the conflict was very deep and hard. I don't want to act like this was an easy thing to do and it was just a flippant thing. There was a lot of arguments going on. It sort of brings your whole family down to this really dark place because when you have a gamer in the house who's abusing the time, what happens is it affects all the other siblings. And it even affects your relationship with your husband and your spouse, because a lot of times you're not agreeing and you're not seeing actually what's happening. So we were all really glad when Adam decided to go to college. So he went, and that first year, he basically stayed in his room and he gamed. And Chris, he did not grow out of it. And I went to pick him up. And he was a wreck. He had not gotten out of bed for a week, very typical symptoms that you hear. He was not eating right. He had bags of candy and chips and stuff all over his room. He had not taken a bath, I think, for a week. And it hit me at that moment. That was my defining moment, driving him home that, oh my gosh, there's something dreadfully wrong here. And I started doing a lot of research. Fortunately, we were able to take a path that at the time I didn't realize how critical it was going to be. But Adam actually had, Michael, 14 weeks of a camp called basic training. He went into the Army. And if I had to do it again, I would do exactly the same thing. It was the best thing for him. But 14 weeks of no technology and just kind of building his purpose back. So he went to Iraq. He had 5 years in the Army. That's how our story went. And so that's kind of why we started ScreenStrong. I started doing a lot of research. I remember having my first workshop at a school, and I put a little flyer on the door, not even an email, it was just a flyer. And I just said, is anybody struggling with video games in your house? Do you know we had over 100 people show up to this science room in a high school? We couldn't even fit the people in there. So from there, I started traveling and doing a lot of research and trying to figure out why this was happening and why our culture wasn't talking about it. And that's when I met Cam. But ScreenStrong has a very bold solution. We decided with our younger kids, I have 2 boys, I have a girl and 2 boys that were younger than Adam. We decided to have a game-free home. And I wanted to try that experiment since the first experiment didn't really work. So we're not legalistic about it. And by the way, Chris, we don't have cows in our backyard because a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, are you Amish or something? I'm like, no, we just decided to try life a little bit differently. And as a result of that, we are having great success with families that are wanting to try the same thing. Maybe they've been burned, they've tried to manage it, they are panicked a little bit, they're just frustrated and they are exhausted and they just want to try something different. So that's what we offer. We offer a way out, a way to do it different, not forever, but just to delay the games and the smartphones and all that for a while and let your kids have a childhood. So it's worked great for our younger kids. It's a lifestyle. I don't like to think of it as limits. It's a different way of raising your family, and it's a lifestyle change. Gaming is not their go-to activity. It's not that it's all bad. It's just not what we choose. Can you imagine never having a gaming argument again in your house? Well, that's my house now. So
Yeah.
it's really nice, I will have to say.
Excellent. And how much you learned through that. And I'll say,
Yeah.
I do have cows in my backyard. I can actually look
Oh,
across the street and see them right now. It was almost funny. I was like,
yes.
are you describing my house? Because
Well, I will
can
tell
see,
everybody that I know someone that has cows in their
you
backyard.
can say that now. That's for sure. And I think, Melanie, something that stands out to me, and then I want to go to the chat because there's been some things that have come into the chat here, is that with your son, Adam, there was a chain of events that took place in him. And and I'm sure you've analyzed it 1,000 different ways to try to find the intersection of why. Like, why did it happen? What was the thing? And I think that's what makes this space, it makes the whole technology space so complicated, right? Questions around, does social media cause this or that? Or does gaming cause this or that? That causation, we all want that because that's easier to parent to causation. It's easier to make conclusions, but it's almost never that simple.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that your son ended up in the situation that he was his freshman years in college was the compilation of a complicated list of variables, not to mention just the complication around his neurology and how he is and that's not going to be the same for another kid who likes to game, who is given a laptop in high school. And I think that's what's so difficult in parenting around this, is that there's no prescription for gaming. You have to make some choices, but above all, know your kids.
Yeah.
Know how they are, how they respond.
You really have to understand the warning signs, because there are warning signs. This doesn't happen overnight. And there are a lot of different lists out there and they're all great, but I have a very simple thing that I tell parents, that if your child can't list 3 things that they like as much or more than their video game, then you're probably in trouble. You're probably at risk, because if gaming is their number one activity when they are that age, when they're young, when they should be developing a whole lot of other, interests and hobbies and life skills and relationships, that's not balanced if it's their number one thing. And I feel like what happened with Adam that I missed was that emotionally, slowly, he was leaving home emotionally. And the video game became his home. Does that make sense? The video game became his world. And he would just come back to our world briefly to, vacuum if I asked him, or, to eat dinner. And that was all a big nuisance. And when I look back, I can see that gradual retreat from our family unit. I believe that this screen issue in our whole country is an attachment disorder. I feel like our children are prematurely detaching from their families, and that's where all the emotional problems are coming from, and physical problems, behavioral problems, all these things. And we didn't know. I thought he was getting smarter by the minute on his screen. By the way, I think he told me he was learning computer code. And I bought all these things, the excuses that he was telling me. But looking back, I can see what I thought was normal teenage behavior was not. You should be close to your kids. They need you. We are meant to be in relationship with our family. And when that relationship gets shifted too much to the virtual
Yep.
world, you're in trouble. But you can get them back. You can get them
Yep.
back. It's very possible. But that's what I missed, I think, Chris.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
and
thank
if I
you.
can
Thank you for
chime
that.
in,
Go ahead, Michael.
if I can chime in a little bit, I had a situation with my own son who was gaming too much, and I have two other kids who could care less.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I talk to parents, it's not just their parenting,
Yeah.
because you can parent three kids exactly the same way, and one can get into gaming and the other two didn't, which was what happened in my family. And one of the reasons I started Reset is there was nothing like it. There was no digital detox to send my kid to. So his mother and I just kind of white knuckled our way through his high school years and had a battle, and he did graduate, but it was a constant struggle.
Yes.
And it was not with his brother and sister in the same household.
Yeah.
So, it's all unique to the kid.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And that's what makes it so complicated. But going back to that, being observant, engaged, informed, look for the signs.
Mm-hmm.
Melanie, I had an interesting question come in the chat. Is your husband a gamer?
No, he's not. Well, I take that back. He still has the Pac-Man record at the arcade at the beach for Miss Pac-Man.
Okay. Well, that's hilarious.
He's
because I'm a
very proud
Galaga.
of that record, by the way.
By the way,
But
that's right.
no, he's not a gamer. We didn't
Okay.
know what the heck was going on with
Yeah.
why this was so intriguing. And one big mistake, and we could do a whole nother webinar on all of my mistakes, because remember, I've made more mistakes than anybody listening, was I didn't really understand what he was doing. I just knew he was gaming. I think if I had really sat down and watched what he was doing, I wouldn't have let him maybe do it. I don't know. But all my friends said, well, at least you know where he is, and he's safe, and he's not getting in trouble, and he's not drinking. And I'm like, wow, is that my goal now? That's kind of a low standard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I really got duped. And it's easy to get duped. But the best thing you can do if you're out there listening is just to start with right now, and just do what you can now, one step ahead, and don't worry, and don't put yourself on a guilt trip. That does nobody any good. And, we can certainly help you if you're a parent, if you're mom or dad, we can help you with the real practical stuff to pull it away. So.
Good. And that's helpful, Melanie. And I know a real practical step, Cam, that causes people to show up at your doorstep there at Game Quitters. I should make people aware of that as the website that supports all of your research and work that you've been doing over the past 8 years that I've depended on. I refer in my blog post, I've sent people your way many times. You have an assessment, and I think a couple of assessments actually, depending on what side of this relationship the person who is showing up at Game Quitters happens to be on. As a practical first step, for whatever reason, people are just, tell me that first thing I need to do. Talk a little bit about that assessment, how people have interacted with it, how successful has it been, because you've been doing that for quite a while.
Yeah, so on gamequotas.com, we have a quiz for gamers and for parents, and now also for spouses and partners. And it just takes you through a list of 9 different questions that can help you be able to discern more. Is your gamer a casual recreational gamer? Are they more at risk? Or do they maybe have a problem? And based on the score of that assessment, which is an informal assessment, just for more information, you'll be able to better understand maybe where your family situation is at and some different indicators that you want to be paying attention to. For instance, is it just a phase, or has it been a consistent pattern of behavior you've been seeing for some time? And I'm also a big believer in providing different practical steps you can take. So for instance, I know Melanie's a big fan of, you're going to need to find different things to replace gaming with. It's not just kind of unplug and then magically the problem is solved. And so how do you find different activities? What are the different areas that you need to fulfill that gaming maybe was fulfilling as well? And I saw a question in the chat as well about different personality factors for someone who has a problem. And there's a number of them. ADHD is a big one. People on the autistic spectrum, any underlying mental health conditions like anxiety or social anxiety or depression, someone who's more impulsive, less structured routines and schedules, more chaotic family environments, a need for competition. And anyone struggling with low self-esteem often also begins to find a greater sense of self and sense of confidence in the virtual world, in their online characters. And that can also be something that can lead them to then rationalize why they need to spend so much more time online, why they need to spend so much time gaming, because that's where they're fulfilling their sense of identity. That's where they feel hope. That's where they feel like they are someone who has purpose and meaning in their life and someone who matters to other people, especially if they're not feeling that in the physical world. So there are a number of different things you can look for. There's a number of different aspects that make someone more vulnerable. And at the end of the day, you can go through all of these lists, but you know when there's a problem in your home and you need to take action on that. And it begins not just by looking at the gamer and why they're maybe in the situation they are, but also evaluating what's going on with the family, where has this begun, and are there different communication styles or parenting techniques that need to be embodied? It's a holistic approach that's needed, and I think it's really important to look at every person in the family.
And those assessments are free on your website. Is that correct,
Yes.
Cam? If anybody can take
Absolutely.
those and you'll get results. And this is based on your experience, your research, your expertise. Like I said, the 8 years in this space proves that you've earned some stripes, you've learned some things. I haven't even had you share, your own story. I'm going to get into that in just a minute, because you had a blog post where you poured your story out that just went viral years ago, which kind of kicked things off at Game Cutters. But I just want people to know that that's free. And so as a first step, that's a really great spot to start. Cam, while I've got you, I wonder if you ever have this question that's come up when you speak to parents. I've had somebody in the Q&A ask about esports. What if my kid wants to be a competitive gamer? And I'm seeing this in the college ranks, that's a curriculum, right, that you can go for, even as an extracurricular activity in high schools now, to be playing games competitively. What are your thoughts about that? Just kind of maybe both sides, or your perspective personally. Have you received that question, and what do you say to it?
Oh, absolutely. I've received that question. And Chris, when we have this conversation in 5 years, we'll see just how prominent esports has become across every school of the nation. Esports is here to stay. And I think it's important. So just quickly, esports is organized competitions for gaming. It traditionally has been more for the professional level, so people making gaming a career. But now, over the last 5 years, it's coming to US colleges and universities with leagues, teams, scholarships, all of it. And now it's also at the high school level and also in the middle school level last year. This year, it will come to elementary schools. And this is going to be something that is not going to turn around, it will be integrated into most, if not every school. Schools will be evaluated based on their esports teams, and colleges will recruit based on that as well. Now, esports is a very interesting platform because there are a lot of opportunities for esports to be a teaching tool, a learning tool, an opportunity to have students who often don't feel included in other extracurricular activities be able to find their spot in esports and be able to actually teach people about healthy gaming habits and good use of screen time and balance and a lot of other life skills as well. And so for me, esports overall is there's benefits and there's risks. Some of the preliminary research on esports at the scholastic level has shown that esports can be very good for making certain students who normally don't participate feel more included. And there are some positive results from student retention and school attendance for people engaging in esports at high school. But at the same time, esports and the potential for gaming to be a career then also increases the potential justification that a player or a student can have to play a lot and to play more and more and more. And esports compared to traditional sports, when I played hockey growing up, there was no chance for me to make money until I went pro. Whereas in esports, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, you could be making thousands, if not tens of thousands, or even millions of dollars. And so the career potential is there, the younger ages are there, and amateurs are earning money just as much, if not more, than professionals in some cases. And so I think that it's crucial that educators, parents, and students are all informed on how we keep this to be a positive thing and not just a tsunami of excessive play that's coming.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have been mentoring a young man really since middle school. He's now a 23-year-old college graduate, but he was a young man who didn't do well socially. And so I just spent a lot of time with him, and he found a great spot leading a Pokemon club at the school that he went to. Now, that's not esports, but it was gaming for him. And he found a lot of friendship there. And we would get together at Panera and catch up when he was home on breaks. And that was a great connection point for him. And I think it was one of the reasons why he was able to get through school. He had somebody that knew, that he could relate to, a group of people he could relate to. So it's not throwing it all away as horrible, but there is the risk, and we just need to be aware of that. Darren Lahr, a friend who, another ally, actually up in Canada, Cam, I know you know Darren, who runs White Hatter, a fabulous organization, does a lot of talks. He said that over 200 North American universities now offer full 4-year, full ride scholarships for gaming, which that's just kind of blows my mind, right? So we just have to embrace the reality of it, but then look at our kids individually and make sure that we know what the risks are. So that's great. Very good. But thank you for opining on that. There was another question here that I don't know, Michael, if you addressed it in the chat or not, but there was a person who shared that their son has been away at camp and is going to be coming home. Do you have a few thoughts on what, let's say some drastic decisions have been made, things have been taken away, maybe not a kid who's gone to camp, but what are some of the things that you might say to a family who, is trying to look for small amounts of reintroduction, or what are some step ups, or what are some things that you would say to that family that's wondering, okay, now what? Like, we've come through the storm, now what? What are some first things I need to do in my home?
Well, I did see that comment in the chat, and we tell our parents while their kids are here at camp, and our camp is 4 weeks long, to review their own habits with tech, because they lead by example, and to change the home environment for when the kid returns home. So we actively work with the parents and the kids during the same time. We will recommend no tech in the bedrooms. So many people, adults too, use their iPhones as their alarm clocks or to play music. And, if you're telling your kid not to have tech in their bedroom and then you have tech in yours, that's a really bad signal to send. So it's not so much of a problem for the kids that come to our program because we look for it and talk about it ahead of time. For the question that was in the chat, I think it was about our kid is at camp right now, and we're looking at that to be his detox. And most summer camps are detox, although they don't have therapists on staff and don't directly deal with digital addiction issues. They just don't have any tech. So, and a lot of those kids can't wait to get home from camp to get their hands on their tech again. And the question was, should we give him back his Game Boy or something like that, or keep it hidden? And I don't think I responded to it, but my gut instinct is keep it hidden. But it's also, you don't want to shock the kid when he comes home if he's not prepared for it. So, my advice is, if it's a problem and you haven't talked at all about weaning him off it, is to wean him off it when he gets home, because he's going to come home having not played for quite a while. So maybe continue that for a couple days and then let him have it for a day and then take it away again and wean him off. But it's kind of hard to abstractly address that one situation if he wasn't prepared for it at all.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that we try to promote at Protect Young Eyes is, to the extent we can, to involve our kids in these conversations and these decisions, to give them some agency in this, right? If it's just always my way or the highway, me versus you, I hate games, I'm your parent. I think what we inadvertently do with that sort of control approach, if we embrace the reality they know more than we do, which is true, then by trying to control a human who knows more about the topic that we're trying to control, especially when it comes to gaming or whatever it happens to be, I think we can inadvertently actually chase them toward the very thing that we don't want them to do, instead of, when that kid comes home, saying, hey, did you notice you haven't played games for a while? How did you feel about that? Did you miss it? Like, use that as an opportunity to invite some real critical thinking about it, and then ask them what they think it should look like now. Give them some agency and some ownership in it, because an idea that they come up with, in my experience, is almost always an idea that they're more apt to obey. It's always a bad idea if it's dad's idea. And so if there's ever an opportunity in these situations, I just want to invite parents into that sort of co-development of next steps. That's not always possible, but when possible, look for those opportunities to get them to own it just a little bit. They are at some point going to have to figure out how to manage some of this on their own without our guidance. And we need to not only protect, but I think prepare them as much as possible by inviting them into some of those conversations, just as an extension, I think, to what you were saying there, Michael.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when I talk to parent groups all the time, and they'll ask me about the dangers of social media and which games are bad and all these other things. And I will say, okay, we're going to go over some social media platforms and some gaming. Just understand that when I'm done talking, everything I said will be obsolete, because new games will be out, new platforms will be out. You cannot keep up. So the best thing you can do is to openly communicate with your kid, even if you're not going to be comfortable with what they're going to say, because if you don't, it invites them to get around your rules, get around your parental controls that you think are so wonderful. We have a kid coming to camp this week who had a broken iPad, and his mom and dad's rules were you turn in the iPad at 9 p.m. Well, he turned in the broken one, and he had the working one under his mattress. So he was not getting any sleep. He was not doing his homework, and it took him a month to figure out that the iPad he was turning in was not his primary iPad. But if you make it this cops and robbers, bad guy versus good guy, us versus them thing, you are guaranteed to lose that battle.
That's right. Definitely. As I say, we turn them into little digital ninjas, and they're better at this than we are.
They will always be better.
They will. So, Melanie, I want to get really practical for a minute, and maybe this is a question that's come up once or twice in your private group. I just want to read a scenario to you and give me your thoughts, and then if others have thoughts, I invite those. A parent has an 8-year-old son, and they want to start life lightly with games with a Nintendo Switch. They pick up Mario Kart and an extra set of controllers. What advice do you give this family? Do you agree with this as a step in sort of dipping their toe into the gaming pool? What would you say to a family in that kind of situation?
I would say to take those items out of your cart and get a Rubik's Cube and maybe a slip and slide. I don't know, for that age. So I would just say to delay it. And I just want to make a comment about there is this myth, I guess we'll call it an urban myth or whatever, that people who don't allow video games are controlling people. So I just want to address that just for a second, because I don't see it that way at all. What we have done, and I've raised one gamer, and then I've raised two boys that are not gamers. And what I see is there's so much more freedom with the younger boys that are not tied to their video games the way my older one was. So it's not about controlling your kids, it's about replacing their likes with something that's a little more healthy than just sitting on a screen all day. So for example, if you've got, what did you say, 8-year-old that you're kind of giving them the switch, then there's a couple things that, well, there's more than a couple things where that can go haywire. And one of the first things is that video games in general are designed to hook you, right? This is the design of all video games, whether or not they're more benign or more violent. I think we get all confused with that topic. So it hurts their development. Like, for example, in their brain, when their limbic area gets all stimulated, the reward center is on overdrive, and we're now starting a craving. So even with Adam, like with his Game Boy, and now it's the Switch that's out there, you're kind of you're laying the groundwork, you're kind of lighting the fire, you're starting this craving. And then you're also hurting their social development, because once they start trading their spare time for the game time, then that's time taken away from another bucket that, again, when they're young, is really important, that they have good social skills, that they are in person with people. You don't get the same social skills on a Switch than you do in spending time in person with your buddy. You know, the mirror neurons are there in person. They're not there on a screen. There's a lot of things about that. It's also hurting their physical development, because there's no way you can run and get your mile time down when you've got a game in your hand. We just can't move. You know, kids aren't moving enough. And again, to reiterate that it's taking away from their love of trying other activities, because the game is so easy for them to get hooked on, and they are craving low effort, high reward activities. And what we want as parents is to get them introduced to some gritty activities. And I would dare say that, gaming is not a gritty activity. I would say, I don't think I would say that was gritty. And most of all, though, it's really hurting the attachment to your family. So that one little decision can, not all the time, but it can actually put your kid on a path that you don't want them to be on. And I know so many parents that say, wow, if I could go back in time, I never would have gotten him that Game Boy. I never would have gotten him that Switch. So we're encouraging hobbies that don't cause our kids to lie to us and to to be arguing with us all the time. We want hobbies where they're not going to get overweight, where they are not going to lose sleep. You know, we've never, I don't think, and Michael, I'm sure at your camp, you don't have kids that are addicted to Legos or doing the dishes too much or riding their bike too much. So that's sort of the grid that we use. If it's not helping these critical areas that need to be developed, then you need to hit the pause button on it and try something else. And Chris, I really want to just say one more thing about
Sure.
What to do when you start to pull it away. I think the most important thing for parents is to change their attitude about their role and sort of take your parenting hat off and put your coach's hat on. This is very helpful to parents when I say this, that you want to see yourself not as the mean parent or the best friend parent or all that. You want to see yourself as a really good coach, and your team is possibly failing right now. They're not winning at their game, and or maybe they are winning too much, but you want to look at yourself like a coach and say, okay, what do I need to do to get my team back in shape? because your family is your team. And I think it's a myth to say that if you limit or you take things away, that everybody's going to hate each other. That's not true. When you get closer to your kids and you get them on board with your family unit, and it's like, hey guys, we're having a losing season here and we need to work on our core. We need to, what do you do when you're a basketball coach or a baseball coach? You go back to the basics. And I think that one little tip really helps parents to think, wow, we need to have fun with our kids. We need to be firm, but we need to be loving. And I will honestly say here very publicly that we have so much more fun with our kids now that we just don't have video games as an option in our house. And they just turned 17. I still feel like they're so little, but they're not. But we have so many memories that I never had with Adam. Adam doesn't have any childhood stories other than sitting in the basement and playing video games. So with the boys, when we decided to go game free, they know all about games and their friends play. And it's not this weird thing. We just don't do it. We do a lot of family things together. And I will just say we have so much fun with our kids. And that is not going to change. We have built a foundation that will last their whole life. And that's what I'm most excited about helping families do.
Thank you, Melanie. Michael, do you have something to add to that?
No, I just think I would echo what Melanie said. And one of the biggest challenges I run into with the parents I work with is getting them to realize that.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. And we have our challenge. We have a week long. It's only a week. We say, try it. You'll like it. We tell you, we give you all sorts of instructions on how to take the video games and the social media and the porn out of your house for a week. And oh my goodness, the stories are fabulous. Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we help them with all that practical stuff that's really hard. And then after a week, if that's working, then go for another week. And you would just be surprised at the stories of kids that are finding, all these wonderful things to do, who knew that she could draw, who knew he was a painter. Give them an instrument, who knew they could play. So it's really fun. It's very positive. It's not a negative thing.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've seen your challenge, Melanie, and it's really well done. So I'd invite anybody. I'll try to drop the link in here. This is where I need a third arm to go grab that and drop it in. Feel free, Melanie, to do that, to drop that in the chat, a direct link to that for parents to try that out. Melanie, I will say, I'm sitting here maybe just a little bit wondering, so I have a 9-year-old son and we have a Nintendo Switch, and Dad and Blake shoulder to shoulder play Super Smash Brothers. And the one thing I'll say, and I think it's an okay panel for us to disagree on some things too, right? We all have slightly different perspectives on things. And so I want to present this for a family also. I will say that unless you are willing to be abundantly involved in it, you do run the risks. I've chosen, maybe wrong, but I've chosen to sit alongside Blake and to play Super Smash Brothers with him. Now, it's hilarious because he's 10 times better than I am. And I lose constantly to him. No matter what character I try, I lose constantly. But I have found that shoulder to shoulder with my son, I have different conversations with him in any shoulder to shoulder, whether it's in the car shoulder to shoulder or game shoulder to shoulder, that when his hands are moving, be it through motion of a sport or through a game, I have different conversations with him. But that's a very controlled thing with Dad. It's not a pacifier for him. It's not, I'm on the Switch up in my room all by myself. It's with Dad. And so maybe to provide another side to that, and again, we can disagree on that, but there may be some parents who are wondering, wow, is there any other way other than, let them use it or let them not? And I'm myself trying to find a little bit of a middle ground there with him, because that seems to be a spot where we tend to have some really neat conversations. So I'm sure we could have some different, go ahead.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's great. If it's working for you, that's great. I'm all about that. That's not what that's not, but what I will say is that it can turn on a dime. It can turn on a dime.
Yep.
And you want to be sure that it's not his number one favorite thing to do. Because if it's his number one favorite thing to do, then nothing else is going to be exciting. And And my son, Adam, always told me, I thought this was really interesting advice. He said, Mom, if there's a kid who doesn't get bored with a video game after about 20 minutes, he's in trouble. That's what Adam tells me. And
Yeah.
he also told me that gaming was really his gateway to the world of porn. And that's very sad. Of course, that's not going to happen if you are co-viewing with your kids, of course. So
Right,
I do
right.
think that it's sort of like going to the bar and giving your kid a Shirley Temple. Yeah, that's probably fine. But I just kind of don't know if that's such a great idea to send them to the bar or to the gambling casino quite yet. So,
Nope, I understand. Well, that's good.
but I understand that you can do that. It's great. I don't have the patience to do that. So I failed that. I never even knew what he was playing. So obviously I failed. And I think there's a lot of moms who are like, video game, what? Like they don't even really care about it. So you just have to be careful, keep an eye on those warning signs, and make
Yeah.
sure that you do other things with him too that
Absolutely.
are more fun, because we want to
That's
make
right.
real life more fun, because they are going to have to exist in real life and not their virtual life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
If that's a path you choose, you have to have
Yes.
your own grit as a parent to be able to be that observant, to make that one of multiple things that you're doing shoulder to shoulder and so forth.
And he's young now. And so when he hits puberty, things might really change, and that might get really boring, and he might want the next thing. And so we
Yeah.
just try to keep the bar at a certain place till their brains can catch up
That's right.
with what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that perspective. Cam, I'm going to ask you this, and then Michael, I want to see how this plays out with you. We're doing great. We're at 8:54. Amazing. We could talk for hours. Cam, what do you see? Is this something that can manifest in girls as often as boys? How do you see that gender difference playing out when it comes to gaming?
On Game Quitters, traditionally we've had our audience is about 90% male, and typically it's going to be an 18 to 24-year-old college student, or should be college student, who is often the one beginning to experience the consequence of their gaming. And often that problem develops in high school, but gamers are fairly intelligent. They're able to kind of get away with it. There's parent supervision, monitoring, and structure. And then they go off to college, and like Adam experienced, that's really where the problem really began to be shown and experienced. And then there's this aha moment of, wow, we got to do something about this. So those are the most common cases that we've seen over the last 10 years. But I would say this year, I've seen an increase in parents emailing me about a situation where there's a problem with a daughter at home. And so we are seeing an increase of those. And because gaming is quite prevalent now for girls as well, I anticipate those issues will continue to grow. We also see a lot more issues with spouses. And if you consider how many boys, especially boys, are playing, they're now growing out of college and they're getting into relationships, and there'll be more problems in marriages and relationships as well. And I think that part of the problem, why it's more boy driven generally, is games that are more competitive based, that are more action focused. Those are played by boys more, and they tend to be more risky than games that are more pro-social games like Animal Crossing, and more casual games that girls tend to play more. And so that's part of it. I also think boys are fairly isolated, and they're isolated at home. When they're gaming too much, their kind of physical world relationships deteriorate. And so they're more likely to be searching for help online and looking for those relationships online, whereas girls generally are able to maintain kind of real life relationships and family relationships better. And so they may be more likely to lean on other relationships. Now, a lot of parents will see someone who's depressed or anxious, and maybe even a therapist will have cases coming in the door where it's someone presenting with anxiety or presenting with depression. And if they're not screening or evaluating the role that gaming is playing in that experience, they may be missing a piece of the puzzle. And so I think it's really crucial that not just parents are aware of these topics, but also professionals, school counselors, educators are as well. So we can identify people who may be struggling, whether they're boys or girls, and get them the help they need.
Yeah, thank you for that. Michael, do you see in terms of the gender split that shows up at Reset, what does that look like for you?
Well, much like Cam described, we have about 80% boys and 20% girls. And the vast majority of the boys are gaming, have gaming issues. Not all of them. Some have, we have gamers, social media junkies, and streamers, as we call them. So the gamers make up the majority of who comes here. The social media is usually more the girls than the boys. And by that, I mean they're, influencer wannabes. They're over-sexualized. They're sexting and sending photos of themselves in various states of undress to people they know or don't know. I mean, we talk a lot about how things you put out there online are there forever. And then we get the range of kids that we call streamers. They don't really fit into any of the other categories, but they're watching Twitch, or they're watching Netflix, or they're watching porn, or they're not gaming and they're not social media, but they're on media all day long. But the majority of our campers are teenage gamers, and they're boys.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, you mentioned something there, and I dropped a few things in the chat for parents in particular, because I find that if you focus just on gaming, you're missing some of the other ancillary things that can come along with gaming, right? Every game has a chat feature now, so you have to be aware of who our kids are chatting with online. So if you're going to have somebody in the game, you should also have a conversation around who they're talking to and controlling that. But you said Twitch, which is probably something that piqued parents' attention. Like, what's Twitch? Well, they should know what Twitch is if they want to really understand gaming, because that's where you're seeing this streaming. You're seeing a lot of females out there streaming, and then that creates this sort of, wow, I can do that too, and all kinds of other things that go along with that sometimes. But Discord is another app that is now labeling itself as social media. It's in social networking in the Apple App Store. It is always one of the top 5 among the big boys, top 5 downloaded apps when it comes to social media that parents know nothing about. And yet this is like a gamer's haven with servers and connecting with people all over the world. It is social gaming across platforms, right, at its best. And so, and again, it's not all bad. It's not that everything on Discord is horrible. It is a way to connect and chat with others, but parents need to know that it exists. And so those are app reviews that we've done at Protect Young Eyes that people can read more about. My gosh, I could talk to the 3 of you for days. I wish we could. We had somebody in the question ask, or in the questions Cam asked about your story. I dropped it in. You have an elaborate description on your website. If they go to gamequitters.com and then team, and then at the top of the team page there, it says our founding story, and it goes into you explaining in great detail what happened to you that led to the creation of Game Quitters. And even what might be helpful for parents to read about is a relapse, which had a profound impact on you, because out of that relapse then came 4 things that you documented on you self-assessing. Why am I so pulled into gaming? And there'd be some parents who, in reading those 4 attributes of your own sort of why do I game, they may be able to use that to look at their own kids to say, I wonder if those are present. So for anybody who wants to read Cam's story, I dropped that link. You can also find it on the website afterwards. But I'm just going to kind of go around the horn here for a final sort of practical word of hope for parents when it comes to gaming, something that they can walk away with that's maybe tangible in some way. And I'll just kind of go around what I have on my Zoom screen here. So Michael, Melanie, and then Cam, just maybe a parting word for the well over 100 participants here tonight, which is just fabulous on a warm summer night, at least here in Michigan. Michael, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Well, I would say to the parents listening, you're not alone. Obviously just the 3 of us and Chris make up a small percentage of the support and information and resources that are available to you out there. Like I said before, give yourself some grace. No matter how bad you feel about your situation, you are facing challenges that no generation has ever faced before. And like we tell kids at camp, we tell kids that we're not going to tell you never to game again. We're not going to tell you never to be on social media again, because we live in a technology world, and that's just not plausible. So understand that there is a healthy balance and maintain communication with your kid.
That's good. Okay,
Thank you,
next.
Michael. Melanie, yeah, go ahead.
I would just say that you have two paths to choose. One is to go pretty much with the culture and dive in and try to learn all this stuff and keep up with everything. And there's another path that says you can delay it, and that video games and social media and pornography, none of those things are mandatory for our kids. I don't think that, I think there's a myth that says, oh, they have to game in order to be in the virtual world. And that's not really true. I think, especially before puberty, their brains are so malleable. We've got to train them to love to do other things. And I do think that kids really have a very, very strong need to belong. Every human being does. And so if you introduce gaming too early, you're increasing the odds that they will want to belong there to that community instead of to your family. I think any gaming problem can be, and Kim, we might have to sit down and talk about this, but I think most gaming problems can really be helped by parents spending more time with their kids, really deliberate time and doing other things with them. They are lonely. Our kids are so lonely, and they are not adults, and we are hurting them when we treat them like adults. They need their family. They need to be around other people, and you can delay it. It's not that hard. Those are my final words.
Thank you, Melanie. And we need to hear that, right? It's hard swimming upstream. And so to know that there are others swimming with you and
Yes.
to have that encouragement is helpful. So thank you very much. Cam, over to you, sir.
Well, yeah, I just want to kind of end by saying thank you so much for having me. And I completely agree with everyone here. It's important to delay, it's important to be involved. And I think that this issue itself isn't really going anywhere. And so becoming equipped and learning how to work with it is really important. Learning how to have these conversations with your kids and your families and understanding what your family values are and how you want to live in this world together, I think is really crucial. I guess my final word is just ask for help. There's no shame in it. There's nothing inherently wrong with you or your situation. It's just happening for certain reasons, and getting help to work with that is really important. The biggest change in my life began when I asked for help instead of continuing to try to do this on my own and pretend to myself that I was going to be okay. And when I realized that that wasn't the case and I need to ask for help, I did that, and a counselor really helped me to begin to turn my situation around and turn my family situation around. And I'm here today because of that. So ask for help. You're not alone. Asking for help saved my life, and I believe it can save you and your families as well.
Excellent. And there's relationships that can be found in some of these spaces. You're looking at a team here that can get you off of that island, friends, if that's how you feel, either by maybe joining a private group like Melanie's, or starting with the assessment, or Cam runs the largest gaming forum in the world on the internet, right, when it comes to parents who have these questions. And so please do check that out. I just want to thank the three of you for this. Those who have joined us tonight, this was a real treat to have three people on who, at the minimum, I may be the baby here, having started in 2015, but that's a rare thing to have that kind of grit all together in the internet safety space. We were lone voices saying things back in 2013, 14, and 15. And so thank you so much for the three of you and the hard work that you're doing on the front lines. There have been a lot of questions in the Q&A that we didn't have time for, but friends, what's going to happen is the recording of the conversation is going to be shared with all those who have attended here tonight. As this finishes, I'm going to stay on for a few minutes, and I'm going to copy and paste the questions out of the Q&A. What I'll also send to all of you then are some responses to those questions, because I do want to answer as many of those as possible. And I don't want to lose them, because there's some real heartfelt questions in there that I don't want to lose track of. And so I'll officially end us here in just a minute, and then you're all welcome to leave, but I'm going to stay on for a few minutes to copy and paste those out to be able to share answers to those from the panelists here, so that any of you who took the time to ask them will get an answer. And I want you to know that this is the first of 3 of these webinars with this quality of conversation. In July, which is right around the corner, we're going to have a conversation about pornography in teens. And that's a topic that's very personal to me. I don't have a gaming disorder background, but I am an adult who struggled for years after being exposed to pornography as a young child, who for decades hid that or thought I was hiding it. And so the topic of pornography is very near and dear to my heart. And so I'm really looking forward to that conversation with some awesome experts from Fight the New Drug, and Greta and Kate. You can check it out on our website. And then in August, we'll have a conversation about mental health and technology with Titania Jordan from Bark and other experts. So I'm really excited for those. They're free, so please join just like tonight, and I look forward to seeing you there. So for everybody, wherever you are, thank you so much for joining us here. I'm Chris from Protect Young Eyes, and if we can help in any way, please do reach out to us, and have a fabulous night or morning. Take care.